Welcome back. In this really big session, there is a lot of information, so repeating this might be wise. In this, we'll be covering the different classes of airspace: B, C, D, E airspace, Class G airspace, special use areas, and airport data on VFR sectional charts. VFR sectional charts have a lot of information, detail, and symbols. It's a good idea, if you haven't done so already, to download the Airman Knowledge Testing Supplement for the remote pilot. Class B airspace is depicted with solid blue lines and solid blue numbers. Here we can see the core of the Class B airspace around the San Francisco International Airport. It starts at the surface and extends all the way up to 10,000 feet MSL. The first ring or tier starts at 2,100 feet MSL and extends up to 10,000 feet MSL, and you can see this with the numbers. The third ring or tier starts at 3,000 feet MSL and extends all the way up to 10,000 feet MSL. And there's a fourth ring or tier, but we really can't see the numbers or the lines. All right, let's get started with this Class B airspace example with a core in 3 tiers. In this example, it is around Kansas City International Airport. The core begins at the surface and extends all the way up to 8,000 feet MSL. The first tier begins at 2,400 feet MSL and extends all the way up to 8,000 feet MSL. The second tier begins at 3,000 feet MSL and extends all the way up to 8,000 feet MSL. And the final tier, 4,000 feet MSL, extending all the way up to 8,000 feet MSL. Pretty easy. All right, this is about to get a little bit more complicated, so take your time on this and repeat if necessary. We're now going to cover the Class C airspace, which is depicted by solid magenta lines. This is the core of the Class C airspace around the metropolitan Oakland International Airport. And this is the first ring or tier of that Class C airspace. As you can see with the red arrows, it says T over surface and T over 1.5. T means up to but not including the floor of the overlying Class B airspace. In this case, the floor of the Class B airspace is 2,100 feet MSL. So when we look at this a little bit closer, we can say that 1/2 of the Class C core starts at the surface and extends up to 2,099 feet MSL. And the second half starts at the surface and extends up to 2,999 feet MSL. That's because the Class C core is directly underneath the 2 layers of the Class B airspace. Next is the first ring or tier, which starts at 1,500 feet MSL and extends up to 2,099 feet MSL. The second part of the first ring or tier starts at 1,500 feet MSL and extends up to 2,999 feet MSL. Next up, we have a Class C airspace with a core and a single tier. In this example, it is around the Billings-Logan International Airport. The core starts at the surface, extending all the way up to 7,700 feet MSL. And the tier begins at 4,900 feet MSL, extending all the way up to 7,700 feet MSL. Next up is the Class D airspace, which is depicted by segmented blue lines. In this Class D airspace, we can see that it starts at the surface and extends up to 1,499 feet MSL, directly underneath the Class C tier. Make note of the minus sign. That means up to but not including the overlying floor of the Class C tier. In most cases, Class D ceilings do not have a minus sign in the blue segmented box. All right, in this next example, we have 3 Class D overlapping airspaces, starting from the surface, extending all the way up to 2,500 feet MSL. All right, next up, Class E surface airspace. The important term here is surface. These are depicted by segmented magenta lines. Class E extensions have some type of dialogue or narrative that tells you that you need to take a look at NOTAMs or maybe chart supplements to get further information. In most cases, Class E surface airspace ceilings extend all the way up to 17,999 feet MSL. In this example, it extends all the way up to the bottom of the Class C and B airspaces. Okay, we already know that Class E surface airspace is represented by segmented magenta lines, but let's take a look at this a little bit closer. Here we have 3 Class E surface airspace. Make note that Class E airports have instrument approach. That's very important. Okay, it's worth repeating. Class E surface area airspace extends from the surface to the next overlying airspace or up to 17,999 MSL. This is something that you need to understand. SUAS operations within Class E surface area airspace around an airport requires a waiver. This is identified by the next phrase, which is something you're going to read or hear a lot. The lateral boundaries of the surface area of Class E airspace designated for an airport. Other Class E surface airspace extensions do not require a waiver. Regardless of the airspace, the SUAS operational limitation for altitude is 400 feet AGL, or 400 feet above a structure within a 400-foot radius. Higher operating altitudes for unmanned aircraft require a certificate of waiver. In this example, we have Class E airspace, starting at the surface extending all the way up to 17,999 feet MSL. Okay, we should already know that Class E surface area space is depicted by magenta segmented lines, but there's a couple more. Class E airspace can also start at 700 feet AGL, which is depicted by the light side of a magenta vignette as seen here. The most common airspace is the Class E airspace, which starts at 1,200 feet AGL, and it is depicted by the dark side of the magenta vignette. These vignettes represent the transition areas for transitioning aircraft. In this one, we have 700 feet AGL transitioning to 1,200 feet AGL, the magenta vignette. There is also another unique Class E airspace, another transition area. It is represented by the blue vignette, and it has a floor of 1,200 feet AGL, and it is represented by the light side of the blue vignette. The ceiling of the blue vignette extends up to higher altitudes such as 14,500 feet MSL and is depicted by the dark side of the blue vignette. Class G is uncontrolled and unregulated. Therefore, no symbols or lines are designated for Class G. Class G airspace can be derived from the floor of Class G airspace, the vignettes, and the lateral boundaries of Class B, C, D, and E airspace. In a previous section, we detailed the special use airspace, which included prohibited, restricted, and warning areas. These are depicted by cone borders. They also include alert areas and military operation areas. All right, next up, airport data that you see on VFR sectional charts. Here is the airport name and the identifier. Next is the automated weather observing station frequency to get your weather information. And here's the elevation of the airport, which is always in italics. This indicates that the airport has lighting, and with the little star, it's indicating that you need to check the chart supplement for more information regarding airport lighting. Here is the length of the longest runway, which is 5,000 feet. And the communication frequency is the CTAF frequency, 123.0. Again, here is the airport name and identifier. Here's the automated weather observing station for weather information. Again, elevation is represented in italics. The airport has lighting and it has a little star, which means you need to check the chart supplements for more information. The length of the longest runway is 5,600 feet. The communication frequency for the airport is the CTAF frequency 122.7. And the traffic pattern for this particular airport is a right traffic pattern, and it has special conditions. Again, we have the airport name and the identifier. Here we have something a little more unique. This is the control tower, and the star within this tells us that it is a part-time control tower, and it also has a CTAF frequency. So the control tower and the CTAF frequency are the same, 118.7. Here are the frequencies for the Automated Terminal Information Service. Again, elevation represented in italics. Airport lighting. The length of the longest runway is 9,500 feet. And finally, the Unicom frequency. Take a look at these two graphics. It's a good idea to review this information before you go to the exam.